You're listening to Shoe In, covering the ins and outs of all things footwear, from sneakers to heels, loafers to slippers, and every type of shoe in between. Brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. And now your footwear insiders, Matt Priest and Andy Polk.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Footwear Industries podcast, Shoe and Show. We are interviewing thought leaders and industry CEOs and executives and leaders about the response to the coronavirus, its impact on our business, innovative things people are doing to adapt and change, also discussing how our business models will forever change. And so we are doing these special episodes now to help people gather intelligence, get tips and ideas on how they can morph and change and adapt to these strange times, Matt.
Yeah, for sure. And so our next guest, Andy, is someone who has been chairman of FDRA.
All right.
Has been a mentor to me personally and has served as chairman and CEO at Cole Haan. Before that was at J. Crew, was chairman, CEO, and president of Collective Brands, which was Payless Shoe Source and Sperry and Saucony and Keds and Stride Right. And he is now the chairman of consumer at Mid-Ocean Partners Private Equity. And that is the famous and the thoughtful and the insightful Matt Rubel. Matt, I've been wanting to get you on Shoe In for years now, and I'm so glad, although under crappy circumstances, I'm excited to have you on and look forward to your insights. Welcome to the Shoe In Show.
Oh, well, thanks for having me, Matt. And it's hard to kind of live up to everything you said. But I mean, I think that, first of all, it's amazing the communication levels that, you've brought to the industry and cohesion and the thought leadership around that. So it's a pleasure to be here and to provide some perspective, both from an industry standpoint and a general retail and business standpoint.
Good. So let's get out in front of this right now. You and I have been talking and texting. You said something to me about, we're going to have 2 years. This is going to change things for 2 years. We'll all be okay, but we're going to be going through a lot of changes. What did you mean by that? Let's kind of unpack that and kind of unveil to us your thought process as it relates to where we are now on March 23rd, and then what the next 2 years looks like.
Well, and it's all your definition of we're going to be all okay. So I think that, the first thing that one has to unpack is the health issue itself and how we're addressing the health issue itself and where that stands. And I don't think that there's a clear understanding of timing around that. I mean, here I'm in Dallas today and they just closed the city down, to, basically the quote unquote, only essential services mode. And I believe that's going to spread to, a vast majority of the country. It's already in California, and some other places as well. So the key question is how do we get the testing out and how long does it take to enable us to empirically understand the situation with greater clarity? Mm-hmm. And in my opinion, the understanding of that situation with greater clarity will take 4 to 6 weeks from today. Then the ability to contain it and to understand it may be another 4 to 6 weeks after that before one starts to see some aspects of this numerically mitigated. It's and then of course it'll be a lingering issue because finding a longer term solution and other things will take 12 to 18 months from now. So there is in my opinion, and again, nobody knows explicitly. If they do, God bless them. Mm-hmm. This is a 12 to 18 month long haul with an acute moment over the next 3. Now, bring it back to what does that cause? The health issue. They shut down all retail stores, restaurants, hotels shut down, travel abated dramatically. I mean, if you look at boardings are down 80% in the United States, and international travel and international borders are virtually all shut off or going to be shut off. So therefore, the stay in place mode is mitigating demand dramatically in any of the trend related consumer products businesses. And so with that in mind, you have supply chain issues, you have inventory issues, you have cash issues. And so we can talk about that and unpack that bit by bit. But those are acute, severe, and in some cases may be mortal to businesses if they don't have the right amount of cash and the understanding of their own liquidity.
Yeah, let's pivot right to that, Matt. The cash issue is something we've been hearing about consistently. Lots of ideas on how do we get the government to roll back tariffs, for example, to free up cash, or at a minimum delay duty payments for 90 to 120 days. And we've lobbied Congress to do that. We've lobbied Customs to do that. And they're starting to go out and ask people if they want to apply for deferred duty payments. But as someone who's sat at the helm of a multitude of companies, what are your immediate and near-term actions as it relates to cash management?
Well, I mean, I hate to say this, but stop paying bills. So if you have a payable that you have to make until you have a clear assessment of your demand and your own liquidity, I would put a halt on all bills, and I would be looking at any bill coming through, my operation very, very acutely. And so in doing that, I would then understand who are my key suppliers, what are my landlord situations, where do I need to go to get permission so that they understand that and that they will end up working with me. Then if you look at your actual receivables themselves, having been on the board of some of the retailers and listened to the approach that some of the retailers are taking, if you're a key supplier, the likelihood that you get paid is higher, but the likelihood that you get paid the full amount and on time is still remaining very low during this time period. So I think you can't look at your receivables as something that will come in the normal cadence, both in timing and in amount, because from my perspective, it won't.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, we hear this notion about, hey, we'll continue to pivot to e-commerce, and e-commerce is, it's a new channel that will continue to grow. But we all know, at least in footwear, that the fulfillment of e-commerce purchases is expensive and the margins are tighter. And by no means is even you can have explosive growth in e-commerce and it not be a panacea to having your doors shuttered. Is there any silver lining in any of the digitization of what we're doing to this point, or we just have to kind of grab onto something and weather the storm and see what happens on the back end of it?
Not really a panacea. So no, I would say there's very little positive that comes out of this as it relates to that. I mean, should you focus in and know your customers better? Yes. I mean, and as you're based on your price point and your average ticket, you can make money at e-commerce, but the lower you move in terms of average ticket and average price, the marginal profit rates and the profit rates, with all the returns built in are lower, unless you're direct and you're getting full margin versus selling at wholesale, where, you might end up with, a better profit level, as opposed to, through a retail store. So I think focusing and getting that right, you've got little else to focus on. So focusing on that and getting it right now is important. But, 24.9% was the highest unemployment rate during the, Great Depression back in the early part of the 19th century. In all the numbers that are coming out now, if we continue down this, closure path for, another 60 to, potentially 90 days, all numbers are pointing to that we will exceed that unemployment rate. If we exceed that unemployment rate, if they report it, because, there has been some change in the way in which that's being reported, you just won't have that many consumers. And so the key will be, how do you keep key employees engaged, disengaged from ones that, you'd love to have but can't have? Do it thoughtfully, do it quickly, let them get to unemployment, figure out COBRA, and different methodologies, look at some of the government programs that aren't fully in place, but are emerging around employee assistance at small businesses in particular, which is in that, below 500, employee range, which many of the companies have, and you have to, get in line in terms of getting lines of credit and getting actual drawdowns and loans on that.
Yeah, one thing that's been discussed in Washington is basically giving most businesses a bridge loan to get through this. So hopefully there's some, innovative solutions that folks at Treasury and elsewhere are trying to come up with, and the Fed to try to solve some of this. But Matt, from your perspective, we're all working remotely now. Is this the new normal for work mode? Are we going to see more remote work happen as a result of this, over the next several years?
Yeah, I think I think that is one area that it will accelerate is work from home or more flexible hours and, flexible meeting times. I don't think everybody's going to disconnect their Zoom, right after this is over. I think that there will be a stickiness to that. And I think that that also fits in with where the general theme of let's use less energy, let's, be more, flexible around different things and be more, thoughtful to, the general, green effect of things that we do. So I believe that will be a step function change in how we work. So as you look at, office space, real estate space, I think the, flexibility of that space, size of that space and overhead needed for that will diminish.
Let me ask you real quick about what brands should be doing right now with their consumers. I personally think, and I'm usually wrong, but I personally think now has never been a better time to brand yourself to consumers, meaning many people may not be buying product, but you can talk to them and build equity with consumers that will attach to brands who are doing good in this time of need. I just saw, I think Lowe's, for example, was helping deliver medical supplies to hospitals and donating millions of dollars. So I don't know what you think about that, but if everybody is kind of clutching at dollars and consumers are really afraid and they don't really know what's going to happen and they may not purchase anything anyway, would it be a good idea just to keep messaging to them to build your brand equity or not? I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I'll talk about branding and I'll talk about doing the right thing. So to me, they're kind of separate issues. So I believe that doing the right thing, both for your employees and how you help your communities, is something to do. So, where people have raised, the price of a mask, right now, a medical mask from 95 cents to $7, shame on them. If somebody is raising the price of a food product, which is in high demand, shame on them. The consumers will remember that, and those brands and those businesses on the other side will get negative payback. So the way I interpret something like initiatives that companies are doing, if there are things that you have that can be redeployed to help the current situation and people in need, do that. And then do not be bashful about enabling people to understand that you are doing that. And I think that is more about positive community messaging, which then will promote your brand as an appropriate brand. So in this case, I don't start with do it for the brand. I start with do it for the community. If you can, in terms of what your resources are, Lowe's has different resources than a, $50 million or $100 million footwear company. But, people want to help others. So even the little things, promote them and get them out there, and that will help your community in aggregate. I mean, still, a lot of people have bought ads, different things where messaging, is still going out, go on a cruise, or, you have to make sure you have diligently gone through all your social messaging, all your other things, and cut that off, because that actually disconnects consumers and makes them think that you're out of tune with things. And then in terms of promoting your product explicitly, make sure it's got a real relevant message and to your core consumers today. Otherwise, I would personally pull back, hold the dry powder, unless you have something that is relatively positive in conjunction with what you're doing. Doesn't mean you can't advertise sale. Doesn't mean you can't advertise, promotions and savings and other things. But I would be very, very select, both in what gives you ROAS, return on, actual sales, and also what gives you appropriate messaging to the community at a point where, just go in the supermarket line and, probably one of the 5 people in line is out of work and will be out of work.
Yeah, that's a daunting thing to think about, Matt. As we close out this conversation, you've provided so many great insights. We're super grateful for that. Let's talk about the upside. It may be hard to talk about the upside now, what life looks like, particularly for the footwear industry and maybe the broader consumer retail landscape at the end of this, as we start to kind of come out of our caves and we start to re-engage and we start to open up our stores. What's that look like? And what are some of the lessons that we will have learned on the back end of this that will be very helpful for our competitiveness in the future?
Well, the first thing is the footwear industry will be one of the industries, in my opinion, to rebound most effectively. And that is for a few reasons. One is there's generally a good relationship between, suppliers around the world, and distributors and marketers in the different countries, as well as generally speaking with the retailers themselves. And footwear hits the 2 E's. It hits essential and it hits emotional. So it is an essential product, which is very important, especially as you deal with any closures, but it's just people need shoes. They actually need them. And then the other, it is an emotional product. Therefore, there is the aspiration, that comes along with that in terms of how you feel and how you identify. As teams come back online, as, athletics come back online, freshness will come back to that. How do you actually take advantage of that? It comes back to taking care of your cash today. Because if you don't take care of your cash today, you won't be here tomorrow. And what will it be like? I think you'll end up with tighter supply chains. You'll end up understand cash management more effectively. And you'll understand how to be tighter and closer with your consumer during this time period. So there will be no fat and happy days for, in my opinion, 2 to 5 years.
Yeah. Well, Matt, I can't thank you enough for coming on Shoe and Show. This conversation reminded me the ways in which you approached engagement with FDRA and the industry back when you were our chairman. And so thank you. Stay healthy. Good luck. And we really appreciate the insights.
Well, thank you. And the work you're doing, even this, work with duties and pushing out the expense there, other things, I want to just finish with one thing, which is the bridge loan comment that was made earlier. You have to put it in the context of the government and the banks are trying to create a bridge loan for the entire consumer portion of the market. And that bridge loan we have to be a part of. And if we are, then we'll play that vibrant role that footwear represents in what we stand for. So, Matt, thanks to you and the team for all the great things that you're doing at FDRA. And good luck to anybody. There is money out there. Private equity firms that have money will invest in you on the other side. And so if anybody needs any help with that stuff, through Matt, you guys can ask me and I'll help. All right?
Absolutely. Thank you, Matt. Folks, this has been another edition, a coronavirus crisis edition with key industry leaders here on Shoe and Show. Matt Rubel came and brought his insights and his methodical kind of unpacking of all these things that you all are facing as all these tough decisions have to be made in the face of this crisis. But there are opportunities to be had, there are strategies to implement and execute against, and Matt has helped us kind of walk through each of those. You can download this episode and many other episodes at shoeandshow.com or wherever you get podcasts. And for Andy, for myself, and for Matt Rubel, we thank you for coming on. And Shoe-In is out.
Shoe-In has been brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. For information about FDRA, visit fdra.org.